Hey, this is Brandon Crawford from the San Francisco Giants, and you're listening to Torture Cast.
You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants, with hosts Willie Dills, Chad King, and Ben Lee.
Let's go Giants! SF Giants! Let's go Giants! SF Giants! Dedicated to the greatest team in Major League Baseball history, the San Francisco Giants. This is Torture Cast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of the no longer World Series champion reigning San Francisco Giants. Yes, it is sad, but it is true. The Giants are no longer champs, but I have another champ joining me right now. The other two guys are gone today because we are actually doing this on a weekday instead of being drunk at night. So it's kind of a nice, refreshing change. I'm here with Eric Nathanson. Eric, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I don't know what it's like to be sipping coffee while I'm doing this, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, halfway through, you're probably going to slip a little whiskey in there. I understand that. That's okay. That's okay. Because
Irish it up a little bit.
Irish it up, baby. Hey, you know what? There's no such thing as drinking time. Every time is drinking time. Yeah. So, actually, this is kind of cool for me personally today, just because I'm taking a lunch break here, and I can do this podcast at home. And my kids aren't home. My family isn't home. So I can be as fucking loud as I want to. Sorry, it's just it's just liberating.
You sounded a little happy about that. We should probably not tell the wife and kids.
Oh, they don't listen to this. Are you kidding me? They have no idea what I talk about. Just, Daddy's talking about Giants again.
Right.
They do that. We haven't recorded, obviously, during the postseason. We've all been busy, and Willie and Ben are not going to be with us today. In fact, I think he's flying down south for the Blizzard convention called BlizzCon, and then he's off to his MJ World Championships, and Ben's at work. But Eric and I are here today to kind of review the postseason. We're not going to dissect every series. We're really just going to talk about the World Series. But boy, Eric, how about those Kansas City Royals? Oh, by the way, this is episode 99. So we're one away from the century mark, so I think that's kind of cool. Although if you add all the bonus sods, we're way over that. But Kansas City Royals, man. We knew they were a spunky team last year. They were 90 feet away from tying the World Series. They had the series winning run at home plate. And it's interesting because Perez had actually hit the only run in the form of a home run, of course, off of Madison Bumgarner during the World Series. And there he was at home plate last year when Bum and Posey decided to climb the ladder and got him to pop up the Sandoval. But man, we knew it. We saw that team last year, and they not only came back against the Oakland Athletics in that epic wild card game against John Lester, but they had several games last year in which they were down and they scored late. But they went 8-0 in the postseason up until they faced the Giants. And of course, they lost in 7 games, but some of those games were just back and forth, and they're just a spunky, ratty team. And I think a lot of people wrote them off this year. I think a lot of people that I had read were saying things like, well, yeah, they were great this year, but they got lucky. You can't sustain things like the comeback wins that they always have. You can't do that. So they got to be more consistent. They got to be more dominant to really be recognized as a force in the American League. And sure enough, they win the Central for the first time in 30 years because, last year was a wild card. And they didn't steamroll through the playoffs like they did last year. But I think, what was it, Eric? I think 8 of their 11 wins were comeback wins. I mean, that's incredible. That's incredible. And what they did in the World Series, I mean, I'll be honest with you, if that happened to the Giants last year, if the Giants were the Mets, I would have just been kicking myself. Because I'm not taking anything away from the Kansas City Royals because they earned the World Series title. They did. They clearly earned it. They were clearly the superior team over the Mets. But the Mets, man, talk about at least opening the door many, many times and going, Kansas City, would you like to go through? Yes? Okay, here you go. I mean, what were your thoughts about those 3 games that the Mets probably had in, if you do that 100 times, the Mets are going to win 90 of those games. So what happened? Why did they lose all 3?
Well, the thing of it is it's funny because I've noticed all the talk since the series has been, the Mets had their chances here and the Mets blew this and the Mets blew that. And you did say it as you're talking, all credit goes to the Royals.
You still have to do the work.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not like the Mets said, here's a run, here's a run, here's a run. Kansas City still had to create opportunity to run the bases the way they did, to actually hit the ball, steal bases, all those things. It's not like the Mets walked in 5 runs in a row or anything like that. So I get it.
Yeah, these Royals, the relentless is the word that has been in my mind since the Blue Jays series.
Yeah.
Is how relentless they are. And they use the old adage that we've heard from Bochy 1,000 times, that you just want to keep the line moving. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what they do when they get those innings going. I had a high school baseball coach who used to say hitting is contagious. And it's you felt it before out on the ball field. It's true.
Oh man!
When you see other people succeeding, you just want to start getting the merry-go-round going.
It is very contagious, and I just think back to last year and how I was watching that wild card game, and the A's had it in the bag where they had like a 4 or 5 run lead late, and then they had I think 2 separate 1 or 2 run leads in extra innings, and the Royals still tied it once and then won it. To think that they wouldn't have been in the World Series without winning that one game. And this year, very similar. They were down, 2-1 to Houston in the NLDS, and Houston had that, I believe it was a 4-run lead or so.
It was like a 4-run lead in the 8th inning or something like that.
And so Houston was like 6 outs away from advancing to the ALCS. And the Royals again said, well, wait a minute, we're not done here. And they piled it on, and Houston made a couple mistakes in the outfield. Couple walks here and there, but again, that is the sign of a good team. Look what the Giants did last year. They all talked about the what
runs
was it?
Thrown in.
Yeah, runs thrown in, the RTIs or whatever.
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's like, yes, the other teams made mistakes, but guess what? The Giants put the pressure on them, and they could not handle the pressure. And teams like the Giants, teams like Kansas City thrive under that pressure for some reason. With Madison Bumgarner and Barry Zito and all these epic postseason performances, and now this year with the Royals and last year, it's like they just thrive under the spotlight, and other teams have seemed to wilt.
Yeah, the funny thing is this year the Royals were lauded for putting the pressure on and getting those runs thrown in, while last year it was all, the Giants are just lucky. They're not really beating these teams, and the Giants are just lucky. I mean, it's a bunch of crap. And,
it is a bunch
of
crap. We all know it, yeah.
Like you watch this Royals team, and like the Mets, they made mistakes. They totally made mistakes. Duda rushed his throw on the Hosmer going home in the 9th inning of Game 5. Daniel Murphy absolutely just he shit the bed. He
went from superhero to supervillain.
And they're all like, series. We wouldn't have been there without him, and yada, yada, yada. Yeah, but the guy still needs to make routine plays.
Oh, and some of those were routine, too. They were not even difficult ground balls. He had hands of iron. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, it's either he's thinking about the throw before he picks the ball up or something like that. Yeah. And it was because the Royals made their share of mistakes too. I mean, earlier in that game, Rios thought that there was 3 outs instead of 2, and Granderson was able to score. But the Royals were good enough to limit the damage when those opportunities came out about. And the Royals, on the other hand, the Mets, they couldn't limit the damage. They looked like a team that had not, that was new to the stage. They absolutely did. And the Royals, probably got helped. And we heard it more than once. The sting of being 90 feet away from tying Game 7 really stuck with them through the offseason.
And they talked about it, a lot.
Yeah, I was really surprised how much I heard about that just after they won this year's World Series that night. More than one player, and even Yost was like, we got so close to the top last year and it stuck with us for so long that we were not going to let that happen to us again.
Yeah, Yost was saying that, it hurt right away. And then a week later, he thought, the pain would lessen. It didn't. 2 weeks later, didn't. A month later, he still felt the same. He said it took all the way until spring training opened, where they finally were able to kind of take a breath and go, all right, put that aside. Let's not let that happen again. Our goal is to get back and win the World Series. And it's pretty incredible for a team to set that goal and achieve it. I mean, honestly, we all know that getting to the playoffs is where the long duration work comes in, the consistency comes in. But getting into the playoffs is usually is clearly the best teams. But once you get there, it's whoever's hot, and it's kind of a crapshoot in the short series, right? A couple of these errors, a couple of these balls bounce the other way, and you could be the dominant team and you just get unlucky or you get bounced by a hot pitcher or any of those things can happen. For Kansas City to set that goal and actually make it through that slalom course and have 8 of their 11 wins be comeback wins. And I think 4 or 5 of them were after the 8th inning, which is insane, which is absolutely insane. You see those graphics like, the average MLB team that had a lead after 8 innings or after 7 innings is something like wins like 98.6% of the time. It's something insane. And Kansas City just blew that out of the water.
Yeah, they're like the whole 1.4% that wins the game.
Yeah, like all of them. I know. Because they did that during the regular season too. But, the 3 games that they won in comeback fashion against the Mets, the first one, I'm not going to fault the Mets. Look, closers give up home runs. It happens. He was 9 2/3 innings of shutout ball in the playoffs so far. Familia comes in against Gordon, right? It was Alex Gordon, I think.
Yeah, it was Alex Gordon.
And he just left one up. He left one up. Gordon took advantage of it, and credit to him, right? Credit to him in that scenario with 1 out to tie up the game. And, of course, they win it in that epic 14-inning marathon, the longest World Series game ever. The second game, like you were talking about, Daniel Murphy, he probably had the most glaring error, which opened up the door, which, allowed the, I believe it was a 4-run 8th or so.
Yeah, and once that door is open, they come charging through it.
They come charging through. And then, of course, the last game, Game 5, it looked like, a 2-run lead is never safe in the World Series. We all know this, but most of the time, a 2-run lead in the 9th inning is going to win. And then Harvey, this was the interesting thing, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I've been watching a lot of MLB channel, MLB.TV, and I've heard opinions on both sides of the fence, and I have a pretty firm opinion in this matter, but I have heard pretty convincing arguments on both sides. And so for me, it obviously depends on the pitcher. And this is a Madison Bumgarner in that situation. Bochy doesn't even think about pulling him. Doesn't even think about pulling him. We all know what happened last year, okay? So he's going out. But you do have Matt Harvey. And Matt Harvey, of course, has had the innings limit imposed on him. He's coming off Tommy John surgery. You got all those things going on. He was at 102 pitches, and what was really interesting is that the Mets have to know these statistics. They have all their analytical guys. They know all this stuff that's going on. And MLB brought up some stats on Harvey, and even pre-Tommy John surgery, he has this precipitous drop-off after 100 pitches. And 100 pitches is literally the magical mark for him. Before 100 pitches, opponents hit 205 off of him. After 100 pitches, they hit 373 off of him.
Holy wow.
Yeah, it's a huge drop-off. Now, granted, the sample size is much smaller after 100 pitches, but it is there. It is a fatigue point, as we can call it. But on the flip side, you go, okay, you got Matt Harvey. He was pumped up. You saw him. He was an animal. And he was dealing. He had
all night.
A 6-pitch 7th inning, a 9-pitch 8th inning. So he was on fire. He was efficient. He had no evidence of losing control or velocity. He was still throwing 96. So he was fine in that regard. So actually, this is where I agree with Terry Collins putting him back out on the mound. But this is where I differ. I tell Matt Harvey, one batter gets on, you're out. And you tell him that. You tell him that up front. So he knows it. He has that pressure on himself. But he can handle the pressure, obviously. He had been. But he goes out there, and he was just wild. That first, he did go to a 3-2 count, but he missed very badly on a couple of those pitches to Kane. And then he steals second. And then you got, Hosmer? Derek Hosmer was up. Yeah, and he left one, out over the middle outside of the plate, and he just flipped it over the left fielder head for a double, and here you go. The gate started opening. And it's interesting because Familia's a right-hander too, so you can't play the righty-lefty matchup. But I've also heard on the other side a lot of people said, hey, look, if you went into this game as the Mets and you said, okay, I'm going to guarantee you that you have Familia on the mound with a 2-run lead in the 9th inning, would you take that? Are you kidding me? Lock it up, baby. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Look, I understand Harvey's passion to get back into the game because originally Collins yanked him. He said, you're out of the game, and that's that whole thing that happened in the dugout where he was yelling and screaming at him, going, you put me back in there. I can finish this. And then
I thought it was impressive that it seemed like it was, and they were doing the John Smoltz comparisons to,
he did the same
what
thing.
Is that? 91. Yeah. 91. He did the same thing with Bobby Cox. I didn't have a problem sending him back out there.
Me neither. I did not have a problem with that.
even after the walk, I was still thinking that he was okay, because in Harvey's mind, he knows, F it, I can let this fly. This is the last inning I'm going to pitch until next baseball season, because there's no way he's going to pull a Bumgarner and come back and pitch 5 innings in Game 7.
No,
I mean, nobody's going to do that.
I just had a problem with the fact that everybody in that ballpark, including Harvey, he's not an idiot, knew that Kane cannot tie the game, right? He cannot tie the game. And so if he gets a hit, fine. He earned it. You threw a strike. He got a hit. He earned it. And maybe you could consider pitching to the next guy. Depends on the situation. But the fact is that he knows that he has to throw a strike. He has to make Kane hit the ball. And he was wild with that ball 4. And it just showed that maybe he's a little too amped up. Maybe it wasn't that it was fatigue. Maybe the adrenaline was so high because Al Leiter and a couple other pitchers that have been on some of these channels. Because Al Leiter did the same thing in the 2000 World Series, when he was with the Mets against the Yankees. He did the same thing in Game 5. The Yankees were up 3-1, and he had a beautiful masterpiece for the Mets going. He had shutout ball through 8, and he was pulled out of the game. I mean, it was almost exactly the same scenario. It was pretty remarkable. And he argued and lobbied to get back in the game, and he lost in the 9th inning. And his point was that I admire Matt Harvey's passion, and I had the same passion. I was young, and I was pumped up. I was like, dude, I can finish this. Let me finish this. I know what I'm doing. He convinced the manager, went back out there, and just laid an egg because he said I was too adrenalized. Because it's one thing to be in the 1st, the 5th, even the 8th inning. There's something magical about that 9th inning. It's, you know it in the back of your head. You're 3 outs away, and it just, the whole mental aspect is different. And Harvey had never really been in that situation before because he's never been, closing out the game in the 9th inning of a World Series before. So to him, his theory was that Matt Harvey still had the stuff, no doubt. He was showing that with velocity, not location editing, but he thinks it was just purely mental, and that Collins should have recognized that right away after the walk and yanked him. But he allowed him, and he made another mistake to Hosmer, and Hosmer took advantage of it. And then he takes him out. And then Familia comes in, and they get one out, right, at that point.
Yeah, they get a ground ball to first to move the runner over from second to third. Right.
And then you got one out. Infield's going to be playing in, obviously, to cut off the tying run with one out. Outfield was in, too, I believe, because they have to cut off the sacrifice fly, although they don't want the winning. I think they're medium shallow because they didn't want if you hit it over the outfielder's head, then you have the winning run going to second or third.
Right.
But yeah, he gets the weak contact, so it wasn't Familia's fault. He made his pitch. He jammed Salvador Perez big time. Goes to right. Right kind of made a funky catch of it. In fact, the shortstop...
I still don't understand why he cut that ball off.
Yeah, the shortstop was right behind him, and he was ready to field that ball. And it seemed to me he had a much better angle on it. But because Wright did this awkward lunge. In fact, it looked like he was going to not catch it. It looked like it was going to go off his glove. And by the way, David Wright made a big error in that Game 4 as well.
That's right, he did.
He did. Yeah, I think it was right off his glove. But anyway.
Yeah.
So he gets it. He does the thing that you're supposed to do. And he looks the runner, but he didn't look the runner back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he did, but he didn't. It was one of those plays. It was one of those plays where had he done that in the middle of June, that would have been an acceptable way to look the runner back because the runner's not going to force the issue because it's not Game 5 of the World Series.
I agree. Yeah.
But in the World Series, you can't. There's nobody covering third. So what is he looking him back to? Yeah. He's looking him back to nothing. There's no threat that he's going to turn around and throw the ball at anybody. Which is why another reason I had a hard time with him fielding it. I think David Wright screwed up that play from beginning to end. I don't blame it on Duda's throw. I mean, granted, Duda still should make a throw, but again, we've talked about it. You force the issue, things happen. But Wright, he screwed that up all around. There's nobody to look him back to. Hosmer's still dancing down that line. I mean, he froze at that moment, but as soon as Wright turned around and decided to throw sidearm, kind of like lollipop it over there, he took off.
That was the frustrating thing. And obviously, this is Monday morning quarterback. And, if I'm playing third, to be honest, I'd probably do the same thing that Wright did. Glance over and freeze Hosmer because, like you said, you definitely can't run him back. You can't turn and stop and run at him because there's no one to throw to. Hosmer's not going to run for home plate at that point. He's going to run back to third. So what you've done now is, the run didn't score, but you also didn't get the out at first. And now you got runners on the corners. Now, granted, that scenario is much better than the tying run scoring on that play, But the fact is that you need an out there. You want an out there to get it to 2 outs. So I think, to me anyway, Wright did what is natural in that sense, because if he didn't look at all, Hosmer probably would have scored with great ease because he would have never frozen. You know what I'm saying? Because you saw him break from third, and when Wright looked at him, he did stop. But if he never looked at him, he would have kept running, and I think that at that point there would have been no throw home, or it would have been so late it wouldn't have been matter. So I think Wright did the correct thing in terms of at least trying to freeze him. But here's the thing. I agree with you in the sense that he just freaking lollipopped it. Now, we all know he's having that back issue, that stenosis of the back or whatever it is. And yeah, I think it's called stenosis of the spine. So what he's done is he's modified his throw to be that sidearm / submarine thing. Okay, that's how he has to throw now. However, he can put more velocity on the ball than that. He's been shown to do that in where he's been rushing plays to get a speedy guy at first. He just lollipops it over there at like medium speed, and that's what I had a huge problem with. It's like, dude, you got a guy at third who's got a pretty big lead off the bag. No, you can't run him back anywhere. You want the out. So get the ball over to first as fast as humanly possible, right? But he's probably thinking, just like Duda admitted, in the back of his mind, I was surprised or shocked that he went. So it didn't even enter their minds that he would actually go. They were just kind of going through the motions, like, yep, I froze him. Okay, here we go. Just lollipop this over, and we're going to have 2 outs. Oh, shit, he went. What?
And it makes no sense to not recognize that that's a possibility. When you're playing baseball, you're supposed to envision every scenario before the pitch so that when the ball gets hit to you, it just comes naturally. And you just react and do what it is you've been thinking about doing all that time. I mean, how many times have you stood out in the field, thinking, okay, the ball comes to me, I'm throwing here. If the ball comes to me this way, I'm going here, know, things like that. Just to think that they weren't thinking ahead on those. I don't know if you put that on coaching or if you just put that on, mental farts or what. They really – I didn't understand how they were so surprised by it because Hosmer was out by 15 feet with a good throw.
Well, see, that's the funny thing is that, again, you have one camp saying, incredible base running. Oh, my gosh, they knew the scouting reports. They knew that Wright's arm was his back was busted. They knew that Duda has one of the weakest throwing and most inaccurate arms of any National League first baseman or Major League first baseman. They're going on and on and on about all this stuff. So that was just incredible, all that scouting and just to put all that pressure on the Mets, because the worst thing that happens is that you end the game and you go back to Kansas City still up 3-2. You're playing with house money. Right. Now, I agree with the last part of that. I agree with going on the play, not because of scouting and because it was smart. I just think if you put the pressure on the defense, the worst thing that happens to you is that you go back home still up 3-2. That is my definition of playing with house money. You're up, a couple $100 on the blackjack table, right? And you're sitting with a 16, but you've seen a lot of 10s come out, or no 10s come out. And you know that 10 might come out, but you're like, shit, I'm going to take a chance. Hit me, and you get that 5, right? The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to lose a little bit of house money. And that's exactly what I think Kansas City was, or at least Hosmer, that's what was going through his head. Now, normally I think that's a horrific base running play in most other situations. And some people still think it's a horrible base running mistake, and it only looks good because of the result. Because you're absolutely right. Oh, my God. There's this one screenshot I have. It's on my phone, actually, where I was watching with my daughter, and I was trying to teach her about certain different situations and when to be aggressive and not to be aggressive. This was a great situation to be aggressive because, any normal first baseman, average first baseman would have thrown him out 9 out of 10 times, to be honest. Yeah. That's what I believe. Maybe even Duda would have thrown him out 6 or 7 out of 10 times, right? But in this situation, Duda admitted that he was caught off guard. He did not expect him to go. So now he's not physically or mentally prepared to make the throw. It's kind of like, you played baseball too. I played a lot of middle infield, right? You're, like you said, you're preparing yourself for, okay, now if he hits it here, I'm going to go over here. If he hits it here, I'm going to cover first. If he hits it here. So same thing. Okay, if he hits it to my shortstop, I'm running to the bag for the double play, right? With a runner on first. I'm ready to receive the throw, scoot off the bag, sling it over to first. So you're mentally prepared for that. He is just mentally prepared to catch David Wright's throw. He's not in that double play position, if you will, of like, okay, I'm going to catch and I'm throwing home. He's not even thinking about that possibility. So he's like, do, then the ball's almost in his glove. And that's probably the point where he's like, oh, shit, he's going? And then he's got to do this fraction of a second. I got to transfer the ball. I got to throw home, and the game sped up on him. The game sped up on him.
That's exactly it right there. And we both know that if the game speeds up, that's when mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, baseball is the sport. As weird as it sounds, you play it best when you slow it down.
Yes. And
he never got the chance to slow it down. I for one, I thought it was a good play by Hosmer because of the house money scenario you were talking about. I'm with you. I don't buy into scouting had anything to do with it. Or
I don't believe
I think Hosmer thought to himself, we're up 3-1. The worst that happens is we go home and win the World Series. You know, I don't think he thought about all that other crap. He just said, I'm going to make something happen here. Because when you force, you know, the other thing that people keep talking about, and I think they don't seem to realize is the onus is on the defense. It is on them to make sure that they keep you from home plate and get you out. Yeah. And if you force the issue and put them in an uncomfortable position, then weird shit's going to happen. It's just going to happen. And like the Royals, they don't get enough. This is why I have a hard time hearing, you know, oh, the Mets blew it, yada, 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 because the Royals force the issue all the time.
All the time.
It's wonderful to watch. This team really –
Oh, it was fun.
Yeah, I brought. It was just. It's a brand of baseball. I mean, their leading home run hitter had 22 home runs this year. They're an American League team. Yeah. That doesn't happen. You know, they reminded me, and I mentioned this to you earlier. They reminded me of our 2012 Giants team, who had no problem with their backs against the wall because you know, some of them, Buster, Bumgarner, Kane, had been there before. Lincecum, you know, they had no problem with that. And as soon as they started hitting, they didn't stop.
Yeah. They did not stop. Yeah, and just like you said, they're comeback kids. I mean, Kansas City came back in 8 of 11 games that they won. And the Giants in 2012 had 6 consecutive elimination game wins in that season. I mean, that's just incredible to me. Just incredible to me. And now, by the way, it's up to 9. 10, actually, if you count the wild card game.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, so I think it's actually at 10 consecutive playoff elimination games they've won in a row, which is like... Oh, okay, that's just stupid. Talk about thriving under pressure. Jesus.
Yeah, and the Royals, they learned last year. The Royals are the first team since the A's beat our Giants in '89 to lose the World Series one year and come back and win it the next year.
That's right.
And it's funny because the A's were in a stretch of 3 years in a row when they were at the World Series. They ran into Jose Rio in '90 and Oral Hershiser in '88. But you don't. I don't think they win that if they hadn't been there the year before. I think if this was a fresh new Royals team, I don't think they take the same kind of chances. They had that little bit of an edge, like I'm not going down like I went down last year. You know, if they don't have that edge, I think it's a completely different series. I'm not even sure they make it to the World Series. We might have been talking about Toronto and the Mets, you know? Yeah. It's a totally different – the Royals, they were fun to watch. You know, I was rooting for the Royals. I think you were rooting for the Mets. I was rooting for the Royals because I didn't have a problem with their fans last year. Everybody seemed to whine about how their fans were, you know, Johnny-come-latelys and bandwagoners, and all I could think is, what do you think half of the Giants fans are?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I mean, yeah, I was slightly pulling for the Mets just because of the arrogance factor that the Royals seem to be displaying. But I'm not saying it was bad arrogance. It's different. What I'm saying is the arrogance that I seem to perceive, I don't care about the fans. Like you said, just look in the mirror, Giants fans. I mean, holy shit. I was so pissed after the Red Sox won in 2004 because everyone suddenly was wearing a Boston hat for the next couple years. You know, and I would tease people. I'm like, name their starting second baseman. And they're like, well, I don't know. But, you know, they won the World Series. Yay! It's like, okay, well, great. You're not really a fan. That's the same thing that happened to the Giants fans, okay? Not that they weren't, you know, selling out a lot of games before 2010. They've been fine. It's all been a lot of, you know, business lunch deals and suites and families going to the game. But, I mean, for God's sakes, after 2010, I mean, there are suddenly Giants fans all over the place. And I talk to Giants fans, or at least people who wear Giants gear that are at school or at the park or at the grocery store or whatever. And it's the same thing. They're kind of like, oh, I love Buster Posey. And it's like, yeah, well, you know, that Nori Aoki guy, you know, he did this. Who's that? You know? And so it's the same thing. It's like, look, every team's going to have success followed by bandwagon fans. I think it was the arrogance I perceived from some of the players, which actually was a confidence that they had.
Yes.
And that's exactly what helped them in this World Series and the whole postseason, because they never played scared, ever. Never. It didn't matter if they were down. They were like, we got this. We got this. Just strap it on. Here we go.
I mean, you felt when Hosmer hit that double in the ninth, probably just like I did, just like the rest of America did.
Oh,
here we go again. Here we go again.
I was upstairs watching the game with my daughter, like I was saying. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Here they come again. And my daughter's like, what are you talking about? I said, they're going to win this game. They're going to win this game. Watch it. I guarantee you they're going to tie it. At least tie it in the ninth, if not win it in the ninth. If they go to extra innings, they're going to win it. She's like, really? Huh? And then that play happened at home. And I'm like, you see this? Do you see this? And I freeze framed the wide angle shot. Actually, it's pretty wide. It was about a 6-foot wide angle shot where the catcher was trying to backhand the ball from Duda. And the frame I froze, I got it right in the correct position where the ball had just passed the plane of the glove. So it was just beyond home plate. You can still see the ball in the frame. There still is no Hosmer in the frame.
Yeah.
So I was trying to instruct my daughter. I said, now look, if that ball was just not even a perfect throw, like on the left side of the catcher and low, I'm just talking chest level above home plate, like he's playing catch, he would have already caught the ball and he would have now just been turning to tag Hosmer. He would have been out by 3 feet, honey. Oh, well, then why did he go? I said, that's the beauty of baseball. Well, what do you mean? He put the pressure on the defense. He realized, yeah, he'll easily throw me out, but I'm going to put the pressure on him and see if he can make the throw. That's exactly what he did. And it's one of those moments where that's why I love baseball so much. Because these kinds of plays that you don't normally see or maybe have never seen in a World Series before happen. Every game is so unique. And I love it when games come to these climaxes where you're just like, even if you don't like the result, you appreciate how it happened. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. That's why I say these guys were fun to watch. I hope they're not this juggernaut next year, because I'm not sure the Giants can keep the even year magic alive if they are. But then again, it doesn't matter who the Giants face. They're already the 2016 world champs.
Yeah, it's already locked and loaded. So yeah, let's move on. But that was good. That was a good breakdown of a lot of the postseason. So congratulations to the Kansas City Royals, and they have the trophy now. Well, the Giants still have their 3 trophies, but the Giants actually had a nice little gesture that they made.
Okay, I was just about to say that.
Isn't that cool? The Giants staff called up a local pizza joint near the Royals facility and ordered 25 pizzas for the Royals staff who were planning the parade, and basically said, enjoy the pizza and have fun planning the parade. Congratulations to the new world champs, signed the San Francisco Giants. So Royals appreciated that. It's a classy move.
Apparently it started with the Red Sox the year before.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, they sent the Giants pizzas last year when the same time frame.
Okay.
And so the Giants, I bet this is a thing.
They paid it forward, sort of.
Yeah, and I think it's going to keep happening every year now.
Yeah,
I bet
it's a
the
new
Royals
tradition.
do it next year. Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice little cap tip from when you're passing the title belt. It's a nice little cap tip.
So let's just talk a little hot stove here before we end the podcast. But some interesting things happened yesterday. Things that, one I expected, the other one I didn't. So why don't you go ahead and touch on that?
Both. Marlon Byrd's option was declined, which we all saw it coming.
Yeah.
Which we're all thankful he didn't hit his at bat plateau. Not that Marlon Byrd is a bad addition, just $8 million.
Not $8 million worth.
Yeah, he doesn't need $8 million. But the Giants also declined Nori Aoki's option yesterday, and I think that came as a surprise to all of us. Mm-hmm. And I was reading, I believe it was Baggerly, and Bobby Evans was saying that this isn't like necessarily a personal thing, that they really like him and everything like that, but it's all about the flexibility at the beginning of free agency than it is about keeping Aoki. And it surprised me, because that means that they're very, very confident that they can plug holes if they need to. Mm-hmm. But it surprised me that Aoki got declined, and I really wanted to see him be on the team again next year. I mean, you had to have been surprised as well.
I was. I mean, there were a couple people on Twitter that weren't. They were like, oh, yeah, well, we need an outfielder that at least can hit it to the outfield. It's like, oh, shut up. Okay, look, Aoki was an all-star.
Yeah, he was.
Before he had his concussion. I mean, he was going to be on the all-star team as a reserve. He was putting up all-star quality numbers. He's a quality outfielder. He's a great leadoff batter. He's fast. He's smart. He makes good contact, strikes out very little. And he's a decent defender. He's not the best, but, he's decent. And they don't have outfield depth right now. Look what's happened with Pagan and others. And even the year before, we had Ishikawa playing the outfield in the World Series. I mean, so the Giants traditionally have had the lack of outfield depth. They're fine in the infield right now. Their infield is absolutely fine. It's the outfield that's the question mark. And so, to me, Aoki at $5.5 million was a good deal. I thought that was a great deal, and I thought for sure they were going to pick up that option. But now they declined it, so he's a free agent. So he's probably going to get snatched up by someone else. Yeah, he could come back around the block and sign with the Giants, but I don't know if it would be for less than 5.5, and I think someone would sign him prior to that. Now, like you said, Bobby Evans said, well, they need greater roster flexibility. And so, I mean, clearly, and if you read between the lines, I think that means they're basically taking a big rake and walking into their Scrooge McDuck money vault, and they're just raking all of the $100 bills into one pile. And then they're taking a big Post-it note and putting it on there saying, ace pitcher, and, reserved for ace pitcher. I'm not saying 100% of it, of course, isn't literally going to go to a Zach Greinke or David Price. But I do think they're maximizing their cash and their roster money availability to just sign the biggest guy or spread the wealth to 3 or 4 guys. And that's the next thing I kind of wanted to talk to you about. And I don't have all the numbers in front of me right now, but with the cash availability that they have this year, and it's a lot.
Yeah, they have like 44 to 50 million or something.
Yeah, they have a lot of money to play with, and that's part of the reason why they declined Aoki's option too, because now they have that quote extra 5.5 to play with. What do you think they should do with that? Because I'm not saying you could sign Greinke because you don't know where he's going to want to go. He's already admitted that Price is the number one reason he opted out of his contract. Money. He wants the biggest payday he can get. And I respect him for being honest. He's just like, yeah, I'm just trying to get the most money I can, period. So can the Giants play with the big boys? Yeah, of course, because guess what? They are one of the big boys now. They weren't 8 years ago. Now they are. Okay, they got one of the top payrolls in the major leagues. Maybe not quite as high as the Dodgers and the Yankees, but they have enough to play with. So even if they could get a Greinke, you're talking $30+ million a year, probably for 5 years or more. He's 32 or 33 years old. So you're forecasting him till he's 38 years old. And here we go again. We're back in this scenario where it's not quite a Zito contract, because Zito didn't have a 1.66 ERA the year that they signed him. But it is one of those contracts where you're looking at it and you're like, if they got Greinke, I do think he would be great next year. Probably good the year after that. By the end of his 5-year contract, when they're paying him $30 million, or if they structure it where it ramps up, it starts at 20 or 25 and ramps up to 40 or something like that, you're paying this guy $30 to $40 million as a 38-year-old who's probably an average or below average pitcher at that point. That's just a forecast. We don't know that for sure, but that's a real possibility.
There's no way we can forecast it. That's the scary part. That's why pitcher contracts are so scary in general.
You tell me. Again, no research, just top of the head. When was the last premier ace long-term contract, multi-crazy, $20, $25 million per year contract that made it all the way through the 5 or 6 years where you're like, wow, he was great at the end of that? Who? Is there anyone? I'm being honest.
No, there's literally. I know. I'm trying to. Sabathia was going down that road, but then he screwed up the last couple of years.
Cliff Lee.
Yeah, he was the other one I was thinking of, but his totally didn't work out.
Yeah.
I mean, he made $25 million last year, Cliff Lee. To do what?
To do what? And now we had Byrd. We know what happened with him. We have Matt Cain. We know what's happened with him now. I mean, he's not over yet, but already he's not been worth his money. There's always that danger, but you also have to think, okay, but if they do get someone like a Greinke or a Price at that price, the immediate returns could be a World Series title. And fuck it if they have to blow $30 million 5 years from now on a over the hill pitcher. At least they got their one extra World Series for that $300 million contract. I don't know.
I think Giants management thinks that way. I do think they think, screw it. If we have to pay this guy a bunch of money in 5 years to win 2 more titles and keep our coffers full, I think they'll do it.
Right.
It's funny, though. The one guy that we're using as an example here is Greinke. And of all of the free agent pitchers out there, Greinke, Price, Cueto, Zimmerman.
And there's a lot.
Gallardo, Pfister, of all those pitchers, I think Greinke is set up. He's 32 years old. He just turned 32 last month.
Right.
I think he is set up to go the longest because he's the smartest of them. I wrote something yesterday about this, and it's for Baseball Essential, and it's all about he pitches to contact. He reminds me of Greg Maddux, and Greg Maddux pitched till he was like 58. He totally does. Yes, he's got 92-mile-an-hour velocity now, but I think Greinke can still get the outs when his velocity drops down to about 88 miles an hour.
It's a good point. He might be able to do that, yeah.
I don't think somebody, like Price. I mean, who do you want? Who is at the top of your wish list, though? We talk about these, but we still want to see them go out there for that number one pitcher. Which of these pitchers that's out there do you want them to actually go for?
Greinke number one for me, because it's not only I believe he is the best pitcher out there right now, at least in the short term, for the next 2 to 3 years, but it's also addition by subtraction. You take him away from the Dodgers, so it's a win-win. I mean, it's if they go out and sign Price or Zimmerman or one of these guys, that's great too. Not as good as Greinke, but they might save a little money. But then you just increase the odds of the Dodgers re-signing Greinke and one of the other guys, right? Because they need to reload for the starting. Their starting rotation after Kershaw and Greinke was shit. They know this, so they need to reload with at least one, near ace guy, if not two, because they have the cash to do that as well. But if you do take Greinke away from them, that's a major hit to their performance from the last 2 years. Major hit.
It's nice to know that Greinke's willing to walk away from them because he opted out.
Yeah.
There's times where you feel like, somebody opts out of something, but there's like talk that there's just a restructuring going on or something like that. Yeah. It's not happening here with Greinke. He obviously has the door open. He's my number one too. He's definitely got the door open. I love just the middle finger that the Giants could give the Dodgers by taking Greinke away. I absolutely love that. It's funny. We saw there was this one guy talking to our Twitter handle who was like, you're just driving up a bidding war, you can't lose. And we're all, okay, even if that's what happens, that's fine. Then the Giants still win if they've cost the Dodgers more money.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, David Price is up there, but the one thing that he's 30 years old, so he's 2 years younger than Greinke. The one thing that scares me is his postseason performance.
That's a good point. I don't think
he's not done well in the postseason. He still hasn't won a game.
Yeah, I think he's just not the right fit for the Giants. Like, I've thought about Price and over and over again, and I said this last night. The Giants are a team that have established leaders. They have Hunter Pence, they have Buster Posey, and to an extent, they have Madison Bumgarner. Even in the bullpen, you could throw maybe Sergio in there or something like that. I feel like David Price is going to want to come in and be one of the big boys, be the leader, and I don't feel like Greinke's going to do that. I feel like Price
is so quiet, yeah.
Right. I feel like Price needs that, though, to thrive. I think he needs to be the big dog. And if he were to come to San Francisco, he would not be the big dog. He really wouldn't. Hunter Pence and Buster Posey will still be the top tiers. I wouldn't be shocked if Price stays in the American League anyways.
Yeah, no,
there's
that's a really
talk
good point.
about Texas and things like that. Yeah, I don't think he's the best fit. I would take Greinke as a decent fit. I think Cueto's a decent fit.
Yeah, Cueto's a decent fit. I think Zimmerman's style is a really good fit to AT&T ballpark. There's one that's not flying under the radar, but one I think, because of his recent performance in the American League, has devalued his actual potential in the National League again, and that's Jeff Smarja. Because he had a 5 or 6 ERA this year?
Yeah, he had a horrible year.
Yeah, he had a horrible year, and I get that. But he's only, a year and a half removed from being on the All-Star team from his performance with Chicago. And I'm just... The Cubs, of course, not the White Sox, because he did pitch for both. So I don't know. I find it interesting. I find it interesting that he got roughed up in the American League with the A's and with the Sox, but not in the National League. And is that because something happened to him right when he switched leagues? Or was it the league itself? He couldn't adjust to it. It's a different style that he's not used to. That I don't know. But I'm just curious if they could get him for... Not a bargain. Look, the guy's going to sign for more than $10 million a year. Okay,
yeah,
we
he
know
made
this.
9.8 last year, so
Yeah.
he's got.
So he's going to go over 10. We all know this. Probably 12 or 13, maybe even up to 15. He's certainly not worth more than that. Not even close, I think. But I think his value has been hurt over the last year and a half. So I think that there's a possibility if they cannot get a Greinke, what if they can sign a couple of, B-level/C level guys, right? You sign a Zimmerman and a Smarja and I don't think they could do Leak as well. I think that's probably a little too much, all three.
Yeah.
But spreading the wealth a little bit, and then maybe taking a flyer on a guy who has had recent poor performance but has indications that maybe coming back to the National League and a pitcher's park, he could actually recapture some of that performance he had in the National League prior. So those are things that I'm curious. Now, do I think it's it's worth a bargain chance? Yes. Is it worth going, that everyone's driving his price up to $15 million and we still want him? No. So.
And you don't sign for the years when it comes to that either.
No,
he's a guy
that's
who's got to prove himself again. It's funny you finally mentioned Mike Leake. He's like the guy that gets lost in all of this because he came over. I even wrote a post for our site. He came over and it's like, great. This guy's a perfect fit. I can't wait to see him with San Francisco, and he's going to be perfect with the Giants. The rest, they need to re-sign him. It's his type of ballpark to pitch to, and then he didn't really do too well.
No, he didn't. He didn't do that well.
I was really unimpressed by the end of the season, and he's the youngest of all these guys we've talked about. He's 27. He's hitting his pitching prime right now.
He is, yeah.
And, for some reason, we've all kind of been like, I wouldn't be shocked if he does end up coming back. I mean, the guy only made $3.5 million last year, so I can see him getting like a $7 to $10 million contract at least.
Yeah.
But, he's not going to be the priority. If they do spread it around, it is going to be with like Leak and, like you said, Zimmerman, which, might be okay. Again, Bobby Evans said it. We are not going to go out there and just try to throw money at anybody. We're going to try to find the right fit.
Yeah.
I feel like they really are scorned from Lester last year.
Yeah, but I think it also proved that the Giants finally for once actually went all in on a guy that a lot of people wanted. And they threw enough money at him, he just decided to choose Chicago. That's it, And so I think at least that shows you, and they had less money to play with last year.
Yeah.
I think that's a great indication because, he signed for $30+ million a year, that they're absolutely going to throw that kind of offer around to a couple of guys. And they're going to go after him. And so hopefully they can land one of them.
And I have to say to the listeners, now all this for me is with a grain of salt because I'm the guy who wanted them to sign Pablo for whatever it took last year, and we all see what happened with him.
I did too.
So who knows if I know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
you know?
No, I did too. And at first it looked because that was in spring training, of course, of last year, and it was like sign this guy, re-sign him right now. And of course, 2014, what he did in the playoffs and everything else. We're like, see, we told you guys.
Oh, my God, you guys did not stop.
And we didn't stop. And then he goes,
oh, my God, you and Willie were so proud of the fact that Pablo came back.
Yeah, well, it was worth it in 2014. But, there's this little other third baseman, a little scrappy young fellow who decided to pretty much outperform Pablo in every single category that's possible, except for number of pizzas eaten or something.
Yeah, my grandma outperformed Pablo this year. That's how this season.
No, it was kind of. I'm glad Pablo didn't do well in Boston because I didn't want to sit there and go, "See, we should have signed him." I love the fact that Duffy outperformed him, and is going to be a Rookie of the Year candidate, and that Pablo failed. I don't know. There's just this sweet, what's that German word? Schadenfreude. Yeah, about it. You're just kind of like, yeah, suck it.
Well, it's funny because we've done nothing but talk about starting pitchers, which we know the Giants have indicated that that's their number one priority. Like you said, there's a huge pile with starting pitcher on
and
it.
they recognize that as number one. But because now they, especially not picking up Aoki's option, outfield is wide open right now.
It is. And do they go after a big name like Cespedes or Hayward, or do they try to go under the radar? Something I read again in Bags was Bobby Evans feels confident enough in his trading abilities to plug those holes if need be. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I kind of feel confident enough in his abilities to do that. The Giants always seem to get just kind of what they need. Michael Morse is a great example of that. Tim Hudson is a great example of that. They always seem to just what they need. Not necessarily, Zito was like the last time, and I think we'll never forget that contract, was the last time that, somebody came in and we're all like,
yeah.
I mean, Casey McGee, but that was different. But
different, much different.
Yeah, so we haven't really even talked about those. And I think that the Giants, I'm sure they've had talks internally, but they're not going to focus on somebody like a Hayward or an Upton or a Alex Gordon or, Ben Zobrist. Ben Zobrist would be a fantastic addition, but they're going to go for the pitching first. And if those guys get signed elsewhere, I think the Giants are just kind of like, okay, we'll figure it out. We always do.
Yeah, they always do. They always seem to plug those holes. And there's been, how many off seasons do you recall, especially even the World Series winning years, where to me that it was a very disappointing off season?
Yeah.
Where everybody was writing, they didn't fill every hole. They didn't seal every crack. They still have all these glaring holes in their roster, and they end up winning the World Series. So, like you said, they have a way throughout the season of, engineering trades or picking up free agents or people off the waiver wire, Cody Ross.
Yes, exactly.
Those kind of guys where it just seems to work out for them. Their scouting and their negotiation ability has been pretty top notch over the last 5 years, I got to admit. So it's been pretty incredible what they've done. So even if this offseason they don't get the guys that, quote, we want, you just got to sit back and go, well, this has happened before, and it just seems to work out for them. Despite like maybe 2011 with the injuries and 2015 with the injuries, because those 2 years were pretty rough. 2013 was just...
It was a cluster.
Yeah, besides Angel Pagan, that was just, like you said, a Charlie Foxtrot. That was just a bad year. There was no real one reason. They just sucked.
No. And it's funny because personally 2013 is one of my favorite seasons of all time because that's when I came out to San Francisco. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like I got that one little drop in during the crappy season between the two great seasons.
Right.
Oh.
That's awesome. So who would you like to see as far as the outfield?
I don't know. Like, it's funny. Ben said it on the last show. He'd love to go after Cespedes. And, I mean, I have a hard time after watching him in the playoffs thinking that right now. But...
I'm not a huge Cespedes fan. I'll be honest with you. I think he's way too streaky. I think there are absolutely moments where he's going to carry a team for a couple of weeks. And then he's just going to fall on his face. I don't know. I want someone more consistent.
You know who does that too? Hunter Pence does that.
Yeah, I guess you're right. But I don't know. He seems to... If you compare the numbers, well, I shouldn't say this year. Cespedes was pretty much ungodly this year. He really was.
And he's only 30. I mean, I would love to see Zobrist or, they could even just plug in holes if they need to, like we've been talking about. Gerardo Parra is a free agent. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing him in a Giants uniform.
Denard Span is a free agent. I know these. Alex Rios is a free agent. Gordon is a free agent. So you have these guys that are kind of middle of the road or slightly above average. But if you get a couple of them or even three of them, you're going to have depth. And I think that's the huge thing that the Giants don't have because they have Pagan. When he's healthy, he's a serviceable center fielder. Now, he's definitely been on the major downslide over the past 18 months. You got Hunter Pence. Now, you don't have Aoki, at least right now. So you need to sign at least two outfielders, if not three. So it'd be great if they could go after one bigger guy. Again, Cespedes, I wouldn't mind. It's not like I don't want the guy. I want him, but I don't want him for too much money. But he's going to command so much. And then I don't like Justin Upton at all.
I don't either.
I've never liked him, and I don't understand the fascination with him. I don't. I think his swing is way too long.
Yeah, we don't need more guys to strike out.
Yeah, he's just too many holes in his swing. I don't like him, and he just commands way too much money on the market. So I say stay away from Upton. Unless you can sign him for like $3 million, which will never happen.
I don't understand. I don't think they'll get one of the bigger tier guys when it comes to the outfield and stuff like that.
No, because I think it's going to be pitching, and I think this is my theory. I do think they're going to land a Greinke or Price or Cueto. I think they're probably really want one of those guys. If it happens, it remains to be seen. But will they pursue all three? I believe so. In whatever order, I don't know. So hopefully they land one of those guys. I have some agreements with you about David Price, but let's just say I do think they're going to get one of those guys. And then on top of that, maybe like a Mike Leake, right? That'll somewhat solidify up their rotation. But now they're going to be exhausted in terms of being able to go after a Justin Upton or a Cespedes. So I think they will have to resort to signing some of those B and C level outfielders, but hopefully get multiples of them.
Yeah, which is totally fine. It worked,
fine.
like I said, it worked with Michael Morse.
Yeah.
Granted, it ended up being Ishii by the end of the year,
Yeah.
but, it
and
worked with Michael
Aoki
Morse.
when he wasn't hurt, and,
Right.
you've seen
So-
these things that have happened over the years. Cody Ross at the trade deadline or off the waiver wire. So it's
Like, I wouldn't
happened
hate
before.
Chris D'Onofrio, I wouldn't necessarily hate that. Chris Young seemed to play well for the Yankees last year. I don't know though about that one. I'm obviously looking at the list. Diaz, I could totally take him back as a bench player. I thought he was fine for the Giants towards the end there.
Toward the end, yeah.
It's just weird to think that Diaz was a Giant at the end of the year. So was Marlon Byrd. It still blows my mind.
Yeah, who would have thought that at the beginning of the year? Very,
Right.
very, very odd. But yeah, I do think they're just going to put most of their eggs in the pitching basket. Hopefully re-sign. I'm blanking out his name because I just said him.
Aoki?
Leak, sorry.
Leak. There you go.
Solidify up their starting five and then, get a couple outfielders. Like you said, they got about $45-50 million to play with, but, you go 30 into one pitcher, you're left with 20. You throw 12 at Leak, you're left with 8.
Right.
What can you do with the 8?
Right.
Not that much. You get a couple of, like you said, D'Onofrios, or not even that. I think he's worth more than that. So,
Yeah, and
we'll see.
and the other thing is with the hot stove stuff that seems to get forgotten is there's still young guys in the organization.
Yeah.
There's guys like Mac Williamson, and things like
mhm.
that could totally come through. So all the eggs, especially for the Giants, aren't in the free agent basket. They are for pitching, but other than that, they're not. All their eggs are not in the basket.
Yeah,
so
Christian
I look
Arroyo
forward to
is destroying the Arizona Fall League right now.
tearing it up right now.
He
Every
is
time
on fire.
Yeah, every day something with his name goes by my timeline.
Yeah, so he's hot right now. Of course, it's Arizona Fall League, so
Right.
plenty of guys heat up there, and then you never hear from them again. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason. So I think, for the future in the offseason, what we typically do with this podcast is we record when big news kind of happens. So we don't have a set schedule. Like in the regular season, we try to do every week or every other week. But for the offseason, it's kind of we review when certain things happen. So if the Giants make any noise in terms of signing someone, we're going to probably record shortly thereafter. Or if there's other rumblings in the rest of the league, something important that happens. So typically in the offseason, if you look at our history, we do about a podcast a month, give or take. So kind of expect that. Our next episode is actually going to be number 100. So it's maybe it'll coincide with signing Zach Greinke or something, and we can celebrate.
We'll be popping corks in the background.
Popping bubbly and all that stuff. And hopefully in the off season or maybe in the beginning of next year, we're going to have a couple of special guests from the Giants. We have someone from the PR staff that might be joining us and have some interesting stories to tell about his travels with the Giants and what he does for the organization. I find it fascinating. So look for that in the coming months. Eric, what do you have to pimp right now?
I'm now a regular contributor on the Giants to Baseball Essential. Look for a couple articles a week from me out there. Right now, I'm taking a look at the free agents. I wrote about Greinke yesterday, so you can check that out. I'll still be posting stuff at TortureCast. It's just, that's my more professional, and then here's TortureCast. So
the unprofessional podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I said it last night. I'm like, if I want to drop an F-bomb in the middle of an article, I can't do that on Baseball Essential, but I can totally do it on TortureCast if I want to, so I'm not too worried about it.
Hey, we record in dirty bars in San Francisco after games. That's the kind of podcast we are, all right?
Dirty closed bars.
We're a dive podcast. Put it that way.
Yes. But so check me out at Baseball Essential. I don't have anything else really going on. I'll be looking at the free agents for now, and hopefully we'll be talking a lot more about Greinke. I'm really all in on Greinke. It's unbelievable. It's kind of how it was with last year with Lester.
Yeah, I think it may happen. We'll see. We got other teams that are certainly have his head under their reticles. So
yes,
we'll be doing it. Okay, so we didn't have Ben or Willie join us today, but you can follow them individually. Ben at Fried Duck and Willie at Willie Dills. If you're a video game fan, he will be down at BlizzCon as a member of the media, actually. So follow him for updates with anything Blizzard. And then, of course, he's going off to his MGA World Championships in Vegas to get completely blitzed there. Ben has some side podcasting going on as well. He's on one podcast called Ace of Geeks, which actually it's pretty fun to read. So I would encourage you video game fans to go over and check that out as well. You can follow us collectively at TortureCast, like us on Facebook. In fact, we just crossed 1,000 likes, so thanks everyone out there for that modest little benchmark that we actually hit. So, we post a few times there. And like Eric said, look for some off-season hot stove articles that will be coming up. You can follow me individually at ChadK21 and Eric at 2OutHits. So for Eric, for Willie, for Ben, this is Chad signing off on episode 99, and episode 100 is next. Boom.
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at torturecast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.